Manager.
Morning.
We got everybody here.
We do. All right, Commissioners, we've got 3 topics for you today. I asked Cody to come in here from Emergency Management to talk, give us an update on the potential flooding based off the weather. Second, we'll go ahead and talk about WEBA and SCED. I'll let Brent introduce our guest. And then finally, I'd like to, it's not on the schedule, but David would like to talk to you a little bit about the Joint Legislative Transportation Vision Task Force write-up that he sent you, and see if you want any changes to that. And that would be the agenda for today. So first, I'll let Cody talk about flooding.
Thank you, Manager. Commissioners, Mr. Chairman, Cody Sharp, Sedgwick County Emergency Management. You have in front of you a briefing document that I prepared this morning that gives an update on where we are compared to what was in the first situation report that went out around 1400 hours yesterday. And just real quickly running down them from north to south along the river channels, starting with the Arkansas River near Haven, which is just to the west of Mount Hope. That's the closest one we have to our county, up in that part of the county. We have an original forecast of 11.9 feet on the crest. That's supposed to occur overnight tonight. But the last forecast went up to 13 feet. However, that river is not rising as quickly as expected, so we're not looking at too much of an impact there. Over on the I'm sorry, go ahead.
What is flood stage? When does it start? We declared a flood, 11.9 or 13.
Yeah, gotcha. Let me look that up right now. I did not put that number on there. That's
over the banks.
Actual flood stage starts at 10 feet.
10 feet.
At that one. And I can get those numbers on all these since I just realized I didn't put that on here. Moving on to the Little Arkansas River near the city of Sedgwick. The original forecast on that, you see moderate flooding 25.8. That if you look at on the monitors right now, that graph that's up there shows that forecast was pretty much spot on. They're still talking about 25.8 feet on that. We're already into the minor flooding area there, and you see the impacts that are listed. It's mainly agricultural land, roads that are going to be closed, that type of thing. Down on the Cowskin Creek in West Wichita.
What did you say flood stage is?
Flood stage on that one, we're already into flood stage. It occurs at 22 feet.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. At the Cowskin Creek on 119th Street in West Wichita, flood stage begins at 18 feet. The last reading, whoops. Let me zoom in here a little bit more, that'll help. Last reading was at 18.9 feet within the last hour. And you can see there from that graph on the actual readings on the left versus the graph on the right, the creek is rising a little bit higher than expected. The next river and stream forecast will come out, later this morning, and I would anticipate that crest obviously will need to go up just a little bit. Still, we're talking about impacts there, excuse me, just water into yards, residential yards, that type of thing. 13th Street is already closed between 135th Street West and 119th Street West. That's not a surprise. Anytime the Cowskin gets above 18 foot, that happens. Even if it continues to rise, even closer to 20 feet, you can see the impacts that are listed down there. We're not really looking at a lot more damage to any property. It's just going to be more road closures, more inconvenience for those who are trying to get around near the creek. Next up is the Ninneskah River, and we're going to start out in eastern Kingman County. This was not on the original sit rep, but you can see there what we're at. The flood stage, we're already into it. It started at 8 foot. The last reading within the last hour was at 10.78 feet. And you can see that crest is probably going to have to be revised upward. It's going to get a little higher than first thought. But this is going to only affect pasture land, agricultural land, bridges and roads in far western Sedgwick County may have to be closed, but it's not going to be expected to impact any homes or any population. A little farther downstream on the Ninneskah, just to the south of Sedgwick County in northern Sumner County at Peck, again, the river there is not rising as fast as originally anticipated, so they may revise that one downward. However, the one upstream, as we just saw, was rising faster than expected, so it's kind of hard to guess what's going to happen with that next forecast on the Ninneskah. But even if it does get to its projected crest of 20.8 feet, again, we're talking about impacts to pasture land, to agricultural land, and to roadways. No population affected by that. Coming back to the Big Arkansas River at Derby, you can see there the readings have kind of flattened out in the last hour or two. The river is not rising as quickly as anticipated, so we don't look for that forecast to reach the peak, rather the crest, to reach its original forecast. If it does, you can see the impacts that are listed probably on the back page by now. Arkansas River at Derby, at 15 foot of flow, the flood of agricultural land occurs and water begins to flow over Washington Street west of the river. That's probably the most we're looking at there.
And flood stage there?
Flood stage at Derby is 12 feet.
12 feet.
Okay. And then finally Mulvane, where flood stage is 16.5 feet. The last reading this morning was 14.71 feet, and the last couple readings have leveled off slightly. Originally, when I wrote this document, that river was rising faster than anticipated. There's been an update to this graph even since I put this document together, so it's flattened out just a little bit. So we're probably back on line with where they were looking at for a 19.9 foot crest on that, but we'll know for sure when the next forecast comes out later this morning. You see the impacts right there. I know that we're looking at real high probability that the water is going to jump the channel just south of Derby and start flowing over agricultural land around Oliver Street and then to the east of Oliver. Eventually it will get down to where it cuts off 111th Street, again just east of Oliver, and that's the potential for the biggest impact that we have, but even there it's not a huge impact. What we're worried about is that it will cut off access to the housing addition out there, River Vista addition. These are some homes that were flooded back in the 98 flood and were bought out by FEMA. Rules were different then, and the folks were allowed to continue to live on those properties even though they'd been bought out. They just can never make another claim like that, and if they should ever move, no one can go, they can't sell the home, they can't rebuild on that property, it's been bought out. So folks down there are used to this. They know to watch the river, listen to the media and that type of thing, and then the decision has to be made. Are they going to evacuate, self-evacuate? Are we going to urge them to evacuate? We can't order them to evacuate. But, what happens then if we need to make emergency runs into there is a question for consideration as well.
And David, your folks are ready to barricade any kind of roads and
we already have been. The usual suspects, and it was happening yesterday. Some of the fields look like lakes. But a lot of the water is like, 2 inches deep and a mile wide. It's not really bad, but people need to be aware when they see a barricade up, there's water across the road, and don't go through it.
Okay. And you've got people out ready to put barricades up as needed.
Yes.
The list of roads that I took out of CAD this morning, that these are based on citizen reports to 911 of water over roadways. We've got Hillside and 111th Street South. Already mentioned 13th Street at 135th. That's due to the cow skin. We've got 93rd Street North and Broadway. That's actually just standing water that we have a problem there, that it continuously pools in that area between 93rd Street North and 111th Street North. A little bit of drainage on the roadway itself issue there. Lincoln and County Line East, 77th Street North and Broadway, and again that's just going to be standing water ponding on Broadway. Woodlawn and 47th Street South, Lincoln and County Line East, and Maple and 135th Street West. So those are the known reports of water over roadways.
And you're in coordination with our sheriff's deputies as they're out driving around.
Right, they're going to, anything that they come across, some of these roads they're being dispatched to just to verify before Public Works is called. And so if they do get out there and they find a situation, a lot of times they will stay there with their lights on to warn oncoming traffic until barricades can get out and actually divert the traffic. And then if they come across any that's not reported, they'll let dispatch know. Dispatch will contact Public Works.
Okay. And a lot of these roads, we can't get big fire trucks down.
Well, not the dirt roads, that's for sure.
Okay. So our fire district number one has to be figuring out how they're going to respond.
They have boats.
They do have boats, yes. They don't get to play with them often enough, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, we've got high water rescue teams out there. That's one of the things that we got. So, very good. Any questions from the commissioners? Cody, thank you very much
You
for
bet.
being here today. Keep us informed, please.
I will just point out this website that I'm on real quickly, in case anybody wants to look it up for themselves before I get an update to you. Weather.gov/Wichita or ICT. And when you get there, this is what the home page looks like. That page, that link that I just went to is right here, Rivers and Lakes. You click on that, and it brings up this page here, and you can just zoom in. It's interactive, and you can hover over it to get the graph, or you can actually click on a particular gauge. And once the page refreshes, again, you have that graph, and if you go further down, you can see what the historic crests were and that type of thing. You can see the impacts that will happen with different levels of streams or rivers once they get to a certain crest. So very helpful and useful page, just in case you want to keep yourself up to date before I get back with you.
Good. And we're putting that on our little app so that people know how to go in and find out what's going on. Super. All right. Thank you.
You bet.
Good.
All right, thanks, Brent.
Tony's already got it covered. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners and staff. This morning we're going to have two presentations, one from SCED and one from WEBA. The presentation from SCED will be a request to continue the partnership and the funding that you have provided in the past. And then the second one will be opportunity from WEBA to support their business growth initiative, which would be a new partnership and funding for Sedgwick County. So I will turn over the lectern now to Steve Wilkinson, the Executive Director of SCED, and he'll speak about their program.
Well, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, thank you. Probably about 14 months ago I was here, and as you know, I was very new. I'd only been executive director a little over a month. I had moved here recently from Seattle, and so when I came in front of the commissioners, I didn't know a lot about SCED. I didn't know a lot about Kansas. I didn't know a lot about Sedgwick County at that time. So this past year, I've been doing a lot of listening. But I do recall the commission meeting, and I do remember the one-on-one meetings that we had. And Mr. Dennis, one of the questions you had for me was the success rate. And so I looked into that. You were concerned because much of the lending we provide is to entrepreneurs and startups, which are the riskiest loans. And typically the banks aren't, that's really not going to fit their risk portfolio. And so we are a secondary source of funding. And that source, being risky, typically has a higher default rate. Because we have an SBA, or Small Business Administration grant, that provides free technical assistance, we're able to reduce that risk. And so our default rate on entrepreneurial startup, our microloan program, is less than 4%. And again, that is because these individuals, they might not have a financial background, they might not have a bookkeeping background, and so we can provide that free through the Small Business Administration. And in fact, we're able to provide it to the borrowers through the term of the loan. And that way, they're able to focus on running, operating their business. And it might be human resources that we'll provide. We might provide marketing to them. QuickBooks training is very common. And many times, these business owners don't understand cash flow, understand how to create cash flow projections. So we'll work with them on that. So that really reduces it. And our role there is to be a gap financer, to allow them to have success so they can move forward and get conventional financing. Go to Intrust, Commerce Bank, Simmons Bank, and get a lower interest rate loan and move forward. So it works well for us, and that Small Business Administration grant for technical assistance has been a key for reducing that default rate. Mr. Howell, when we met one-on-one, you said very clearly to me, Steve, separate. You got a housing, you got a weatherization program, you got economic development, you got grant writing. Make some changes there. And it kind of took me back at that meeting, and I really didn't understand what you meant by that, but in this year I have. And so we have made that process, and we're in that process of doing it. It's a good idea. There's some real benefits and advantages to doing it. There's some legal, not shenanigans, but some legal processes that we need to go through being a nonprofit. but we are going there. I think it's really important. Looking at the lending side, the economic development, rebranding, separating that division. So you will see that. I apologize, it does take a little longer through the process than I like, but I did listen to you, and there are advantages to that, and we're going to do that. So you might see a different name. I'm not, you know, you say SCED, and you're like, what? And then you say South Central Kansas Economic Development District, and you say what? So we're probably going to do some rebranding on the economic development side to help on that as well. When I came here, I didn't know, there was some confusion as well. Well, Steve, you're with SCED, but there's BREG, there's REAP out there. I learned about a plan for prosperity that was created in 2015. I didn't know many of these groups that are out there, and so during this year I've worked very hard to get in front of Andrew Nave and his team at Greater Wichita Partnership. I've got, of course, Alicia's been kind enough. I've met with Wichita Independent Business Association many times. It was very important to me because we don't have as much role with the Hispanic community to get in front of the Hispanic community. That's really important to me. It's one of the fastest growing populations. It's a population base that is not always heard. There's many businesses out there that need the type of funding we have, so I'm working with Alicia Sanchez at the Wichita Hispanic Chamber to get in front of them to provide opportunities for the Hispanic business community as well. That's very, very important to us. Listening to your comments at that meeting and separating what is your role, I purposely got together with Keith Lawing at WorkSource, purposely got together with Gary Plummer and said, okay, what are our roles? How do we make sure we're not redundant, we're not repetitive, we are not continually kind of stepping over each other. We need to make clear what is our roles, what is our functions, our objectives. Keith and Gary have been amazing. Andrew and Greater Wichita Partnership are involved in that. Harvey Council is involved in that. I'm trying to think, K96, the young lady there, she's involved in that. So we have a number of groups that are coming together and saying, how can we work together on economic development activities with separate roles? And how do we provide collaboration, cooperation together? So I believe the other organizations, and I know SCED has really listened to you. That's extremely important to us, that we are an effective organization. When I came in, we had 8 funding programs. I've eliminated 4 of those. We're down to 4. Those are 4 effective programs. As I share with you, Mr. Dennis, my wife's a veteran, Army veteran. She works with veterans transitioning into manufacturing. So it's really important to me, and so we are working to help veterans that have ideas, have business ideas, provide them the skills, the finances, the funding that they need to become entrepreneurs and startup business owners. So we're working with veterans as well. There's a great program that we use through the Small Business Administration that puts them actually to the top of the line, puts them right up in front, reduces their costs for the funding, as well as if there's kind of these iffy decisions, analytical decisions, you kind of lean to their, say, okay, we're going to give you a shot here, even though it looks a little tough on the decision, we're going to give you the benefit of the doubt, and we'll work with them through our assistance, technical assistance, to help them be successful. So I'm really excited about helping veterans, because there's a lot of veterans here in Kansas, young and old, that really have some amazing ideas that can be very helpful here. Technology, being from Seattle, technology is really important. I got my mortgage loan, my car loan, all on my phone. So right now we're working on application for entrepreneurs and startups that you can just apply online, wherever you have internet access, on your phone, iPad, computer, and apply anytime, anywhere. And the benefit to that is we can give you a pre-qualification within probably 48 hours we're looking at, and it's more efficient for borrowers, and they're becoming more accustomed to that. We also use e-signatures, which is very common now. So we're not traveling, they're not traveling to us. So we're trying to be a very effective organization and much more efficient as well. We took on broadband last year, and broadband is a big issue. It's a big issue even here in Wichita and Sedgwick County. We've invited the Broadband Task Force up in Topeka here to Wichita for our second symposium. We had one in April. We've invited them for a second. Right now, they are working on mapping broadband access and capability in the state, so that's their priority right now. But we've invited them to come here to listen to the communities. As we had at the other symposium, we had city administrators, mayors, many staff members there. And so we hope to have that same audience again and just listen and have a great conversation with the Broadband Task Force out of the state. So it's been a great, very effective year. A lot of changes coming. Sometimes I wonder if my team, so I do it in waves, these changes, but they've been very productive. So I want to thank you very much for your investment and look forward to the next 12 months.
Good. Questions from the commissioners? I have a question about I'm sorry.
I was just going to say Kayleen Haig.
Yeah, thank you, Kayleen, yeah. How could I forget that personality?
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I have a question about broadband. I think it's critical in today's world that we provide broadband access to everybody. I know the city of Wichita is working on the city area.
Yep.
My concern is the rural areas.
Yeah.
So if we were going to concentrate anywhere, that would be the place I would rather
Yep.
concentrate. I don't know what the other commissioners think about it, but the city can handle it inside the city limits, but how do we provide it to all of those people who are living out in the unincorporated areas?
Yeah, Mays was at the last symposium. Terry, I believe, with Hope, he was at that symposium. Haven was there as well. Valley Center was there as well, and that's the same similar feedback we had from those communities, that the access and capability in these communities are extremely important to keep the businesses, especially young people. It is the #1 topic of quality of life, is access to broadband in these communities, and it is an important factor in economic development.
Good. Any other questions?
I just make a comment. I think SCED brings real value to South Central Kansas, and appreciate your role in helping small businesses, of which that's where I spent my life, and it's a very small business. And some of the resources are difficult. Sometimes these things are intimidating to a small business guy, and I think your service is extremely valuable.
I grew up around small business. My dad worked at an airport for Macaw, and Macaw went off and asked my dad to go with him. He didn't. Bad choice, because that became AT&T and all that. But he went up and built his own business, sold it to Dole for $6 million. So I've seen that success going from
$6 million?
$6 million. Yeah. So I saw him going from working in a closet as a fixed base operator out of a small airport to providing United Airlines, Alaska Airlines services at their airport. So I've seen it done, and that's been my example for a while. And as you know, I've been in banking all my career until now. So I do thank you for the one-on-ones. I really did thank you for what you said. Some of it was hard for me to hear, but there's so much truth in what you had to say. So I really did appreciate that feedback. And the more feedback I get, I think the more effective our organization can be, especially, eliminating 4 programs is important. You need clarity and transparency as well for people. So I do appreciate your input. Thank you.
Thank you. We got Weeba up next. Go right ahead.
So next we have the president of Wichita Independent Business Association, Alicia Holloway, and she'll talk about the business growth initiative and whatever.
Good morning, and I appreciate your time. You have in front of you the proposal that we've made to Sedgwick County. And let me give you a little bit of history. And Mr. Renzaw, you were in early discussions years and years ago with Tim Witzman. We knew from our member base at WIBA, which are typically entrepreneurs, very small, some of them home-based business, emerging businesses, that they had a difficult time of knowing who to go to, where to go to, when they needed help in either growing or removing barriers to their growth. So this was an idea, a passion that we had for several years before we were finally able to get support for the Business Growth Initiative through the City of Wichita, and that began 3 years ago. The reason we're coming before the county to expand that into cities outside of the City of Wichita is because of the phenomenal success that this program has had. It has been funded each year at $100,000 with an additional $25,000 for scholarships that has been dedicated to technical, high-demand workforce training. To date, and you can see the numbers, we returned $37 in return on investment per every dollar that was invested by the city. That's just been phenomenal. We are actually on track this year to exceed the goals that the city and WIBA has agreed to, and a lot that is largely due to the fact that now the business community is aware of the program. The marketing effort for the last 3 years has grown exponentially, and what this is a true boot on the ground, my boots primarily, grassroots effort of reaching out to not only WIBA members, but to business community as a whole. We don't differentiate whether they're members or not. We are here to help the dreamers, the ones that have got a business going, the ones that are ready to move to the next level, and we connect them with the agencies and partners that can provide that assistance. SCED is one of the organizations that we send people to. Marcia Stevens at KSBDC, Greater Wichita Partnership. And a lot of times it's removing, how do I get a permit? How do I get going for expansion? We will actually walk them through that process and connect them with the appropriate person in the city. There are dozens of communities outside of the city of Wichita that are not receiving this attention or help. We are specifically unique in this effort. It's not a duplication of GWP. It is not a duplication of other economic development, and that's why we purposely don't call it that. We are here to hold a hand out to these people to help them get the answers and the assistance they need, and it is a wide range of issues. So that's our proposal. We believe that we could actually help, at minimum, an additional 200 businesses achieve growth and expansion in the outlying communities. The dollars are spent by having a person's time, our marketing outreach, which includes print, social media, radio, and job fairs. That's how those dollars are spent. And then the tracking of outcomes performance will be measured by the number of companies contacted, the assistance specifically provided, and the jobs either created or fulfilled as a result of our outreach.
Very good. Commissioner Enron?
So, but Alicia, that you're act as a resource or a consultant, maybe.
Correct.
Small business, but you don't offer specific legal advice or financial support. You just help folks.
We will connect them with that expert. That's exactly what we do. Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
And what you're requesting of us is resources so that you can expand outside of Wichita.
Correct. And that would allow, that funding would allow for another separate person that is solely dedicated to those outlying communities outside of the city of Wichita. That's primarily where most of that funding will go, so that we have a person aside from me to do that.
Other questions?
Have you gone to those communities, to the city councils and talked to them about this?
Actually, no. No, I have not yet. However, we are very well aware, because we have members that are living in those cities, that there is nothing like it out there. That's why we believe that this would be extremely beneficial to them.
Anything else, Commissioner Randall? Other commissioners?
Thank you so much for your time.
One question. Yours
Yes, sir.
requested 125,000.
No, we're only requesting 100.
100, okay. And SCAD,
60.
what was your request?
60,000.
60,000. Okay, that's fine, David.
Thank you very much.
All right, last, David.
Well, good. I'm glad David was here because I had it on my list anyway, but we do have to have, what's the date that we have to have the information in written?
The deadline is 3 o'clock, Monday, October 15th.
Very good, so it's very timely that we're doing this today. You want to tell us what you got to say?
About it. And the oral presentation was actually on Thursday the 18th. Metroplex. So I sent all of you what we came up with, the draft of the written testimony. And the written testimony can only be...
Do we need to move the mic over? Tony can't hear you.
And they're real strict on this. The written testimony can only be 4 pages. That's it. And the oral part can only be 10 minutes. You're cut off at 10 minutes. So we're getting that figured out. We're working with the city. We have, especially on the North Junction, which is our #1 priority. And we've got an outline with Wichita, what they're going to present, Gary Jansen, and then I'm going to present for the county. Now, also, there's a deadline for getting on the list to present. So I was going to ask, did you want to also talk, Mr. Chairman, a little bit, or you want me to get you on the list?
You're going to talk, you're the expert. If
Okay.
they ask any questions,
Okay.
we don't need to have someone that doesn't know about this to the detail that you do.
Okay. So our priorities are the North Junction, and there is a lot of support with the South Central Kansas Transportation Coalition, as we call it, with the Chamber, Wichita, Sedgwick County, Newton, Park City, Valley Center. Everybody pretty much is in favor of that project, and it's $100 million by itself. But from the way we talk to people, and KDOT and everyone, one of the purposes of the committee is to gather all the projects that they can, that people are talking about in the state, to show the leaders in Topeka, here's what the problem is here, and they'll try to come up with a number in the billions of what the need is. So Wichita is the front and back of an 8.5 by 11 filled up with projects. So now, at this point, we have the North Junction, the Northwest Expressway, East and West Kellogg, and then Derby called just the other day, and they would like us to support them on ARC 95. So we added that on there. If that's not what the commission wants to do, it's easily taken off. So we're here just today to talk about it a little bit, see if we want to add anything, take off anything, but we have till Monday to get it figured out what we want to submit.
Truly, I understand where Derby's coming from. It is a project that's a little more closely completed than some of the other ones, but I guess my problem is if we start adding each of the communities once, then we're going to need to add passenger rail service, because Wichita wants that. It's their #2. We're going to have to look at what the other communities around here have. We need to make sure that we put down what we think that Sedgwick County's priorities are, and therefore I think the direction that WAMPO's going on that is that they say that these are the priorities, and we are a coalition and we'll support the other agencies, but not identify them as one of the priorities. One other point, if we get $100 million for the North Junction, we're probably in pretty good shape. I don't see that the state of Kansas giving us much more beyond that. But I, for one, and we'll listen to what the other commissioners say, is that the North Junction is #1, Northwest Bypass 2, going west on Kellogg's 3, and going east on Kellogg is #4. And from there on, we support the other folks that are in the coalition.
Okay.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner
So
Ransom?
tell me, this is for funding from whom and for what time frame?
About every 10 years, the state has done a big transportation program. This is actually my fourth one that I've been in, not.
4 times 10, okay.
Is
got
that-
it.
yeah, okay. That's, I don't tell everybody about that. But anyway, and usually what happens after they get all of these projects is it goes into a big competition. And then we'll get points for each project, and then a lot of times it depends on, well, how much money are the locals gonna put in, and that will be points. How much economic development is gonna be created, and that's points for a project. And I will tell you, the Northwest Expressway, or bypass, as some people call it, was the third highest, tied for the second highest in the whole state, last 10 years ago. So,
For economic development.
for economic development. So we've always touted that project, and we have a third of the right of way, $17 million has been bought.
Well, how much, I mean, do you even have an idea of how much are they talking about having available for the statewide? We don't even know.
No, they don't know because they want to see what's the need, how many
state.
projects are there out there, and then they'll add it all up.
What's the value of Northeast, Kellogg, and Northwest Bypass?
Okay, the North Junction, we're trying to get 100 million for this phase. The Northwest Bypass, the whole thing is like $600 million, but you can do it in pieces. And
Right.
we actually have, the Turnpike is going to do a study on part of that now to possibly make it a tollway
Right.
on a part of it. So there's a lot of things
What
going
about
on.
Kellogg?
What?
What about Kellogg?
I don't know what that adds up to, but it will be huge.
How much, okay, so how much did the last time we did this, how much did they allocate statewide, do you know?
And I don't remember, but it was big, and they went out for bonding, and they didn't do 27 projects from the last one, and those will be the first ones done with this one, is what they're saying.
So there's,
Do they still maintain that priority?
What?
The ones from the last time still,
They didn't build them, they stopped, they quit.
but have things changed? I mean, are they still valid priorities? I'm sorry.
no, I think that's a good question. None of what we're talking about is one of those 27?
No.
I'm not sure that makes sense. Things change.
Well, I think we can emphasize that. The-
Pardon me?
Okay, so that's 8 billion
Thank you.
for the whole state.
Also, the 4 projects we're looking at, that we've talked about, and we haven't confirmed that, but if we talk about those 4, all 4 of those are already pretty well designed, engineered to some extent, so that they're kind of ready to go.
North Junction is for the first phase, Northwest Bypass it's designed, and West Kellogg is designed, East Kellogg is not.
Okay. Very good. Other questions from commissioners?
Well, I would like to see the,
Commissioner Howard.
thank you, Mr. Chairman, I would like to see the ARC 95 added. I mean, doesn't mean this is going to compete with the other priorities you've listed. It just needs to stay on the list. It's a line item on the list. Derby is the second largest city in Sedgwick County, one of the largest cities of the state of Kansas. It's relevant. This is a plan it's a mature plan. They've had studies. We've been talking about this for a long time. I guess my concern is there's not a place to get across the railroad tracks. Even in Mulvane, there's constant trains, and so if you go that way, it's a risk. You got to stop by trains. If you go 47th Street or MacArthur, you've got to go all the way into Wichita to have a sure crossing of the railroad tracks, and this would provide that one opportunity. So I think it is relevant, and I think it deserves a space on that sheet. Derby's been a huge supporter of that, as well as the city of Painesville and the city of Mulvane. So there's 3 cities out there which really stand to benefit, especially. I'm not saying it's a higher priority necessarily than the other things you've listed, but it certainly deserves a spot on the list.
Any other comments from commissioners?
Well, if you think of other things, email, and
Okay.
we can get it around to everybody and try to come to a consensus.
All right. Well, again, my concern about putting ARC 95 on there is I have not yet understood the economic benefit of passenger rail. Now, I know that there's a breakout session that morning from like 8:30 to 10 that's going to talk about that. Maybe I'll learn something at that point. But having passengers get on in Newton and go through here on the way down south, I don't understand the economic benefit of that. Maybe there is. So my concern is if we start saying we're going to support this town and this town and this town, why can't we do like WAMPO is doing and say these are our top priorities and we support our other communities?
What does the passenger rail have to do with ARC 95?
Passenger rail is number 2 for Wichita.
I see.
So are we going to say we're going to submit
Are
something?
they submitting their own list?
They're submitting their own list.
Okay.
Isn't Derby going to submit their own list?
I don't know. It's a good question. I'll have to
And
ask the question.
by the way, the Northwest Expressway is not on Wichita's list.
Yeah, tell me again what is on their list.
North Junction, let me see if I have that.
While you're looking for that, I think it's number 1 is the North Junction. I'm positive of that. Number 2 is passenger rail. And then from there, I'm not quite sure. I know that they're talking about only the 135th going west, not beyond that. And as I recall, they may have mentioned going east a little ways into Butler, but I'm not sure.
Well, the Northwest bypass is on the comprehensive plan. That's supposed to make a difference. I don't remember ever talking about passenger rail on the comprehensive plan.
They have the North Junction, the passenger rail, and Newton already presented that on October the 4th. Oh, then they have West Kellogg, East Kellogg, Kellogg and I-235, the blue phase, that's the next phase of that. And then they've got back to K96, Hillside to Greenwich. They're saying that that's starting to become congested and they want to do something there. Some of these things are new that I had not heard of that before. And so I don't really have much information on it. But that's I thought they had come up with another list besides this, but I don't see it. But anyway, that was the latest.
Well, I think ARC 95 would relieve some pressure from K15 and Rock Road. So again, I think it's a county priority. It should be our priority, trying to move traffic around the outer side, just like Northwest Bypass or K96 out northeast. This provides, if you will, a new artery, if you will, on the other side of the county. And so it relieves pressure. Right now, pressure on K15 and Rock Road is getting extremely difficult to find, good solutions to those two roads. But this ARC
But
95
we're talking
would relieve
about
some
ARC
pressure.
95 20 years from now, not now.
I understand
We're
that.
talking about problems right now.
But that's why this belongs on the list. I'm not saying it's going to be a priority. It's going to displace anything else you mentioned. But leave it a place.
But
leave
why
it a spot
can't
on
we
the list.
say that we support our other communities' efforts? Because if we pull ARC 95 up, I don't see any way we don't have to say we're going to support Wichita and pull passenger rail up, and I can't support passenger rail.
Well, this is not about making Derby happy. I'm, as a commissioner, telling you I think ARC 95 is important from my perspective as a commissioner. It's not about me supporting Derby as a city. It's about me supporting a regional important thing as a commissioner. So again, if you want to support something, North Junction, it's not because of the city. It's because you feel it's important, and I agree with you. Okay, it's our priority. Okay, happens to line up with their priority. But this is it's on the list because we think it's important. And I'm just telling you, I think that ARC 95 is important.
Okay. I understand. I guess we're going to have a consensus, because at this point, I don't know, and I understand where he's coming from, truly, but I don't believe that it belongs on the list beyond saying we support the other communities. So I need to know what the rest of the commissioners want to do.
Well, I want to go back. The $8 billion in T-Works last time, what portion came down to Sedgwick County and Wichita. Do we know that?
I-235 in Kellogg was the main one, and then we put in 11.6 million, and that's one of the reasons we got it. Remember I was saying a while ago,
No,
they'd come back.
And that was 100 and some million, right?
Mhm. We put in
That's
about
the only
10,
project
we
we
put in
got?
about 10%.
T-Works also did Kellogg and Webb too, because
Yes,
they had the big.
Kellogg and Webb, that,
Mhm.
because we had to do that one, and then those other, yeah, Kellogg and Greenwich, all of that.
47 to 135.
That's right,
So we got several projects.
we did.
More than the history of the Department of Transportation's ever had at one time in Sedgwick County.
Is Derby supporting, bringing forth their own list, or are they just piggybacking on us?
Derby will speak also and get on the list and submit their own.
What's the will of commissioners?
Okay.
Well, I support the other communities. I mean, if that statement covers it, and in that respect, support Derby's request, so.
We'll keep in contact by email.
Okay.
Get something figured out.
Very good. All right.
Do we need to vote on this in the VOCC meeting, so we have, I guess, a record of our positions? It's more than just a staff meeting?
Do we need a formal vote to,
Don't think so.
I don't know why we'd need a formal vote.
I guess I'd prefer to have a formal vote.
You can always bring up an off-agenda item.
Okay.
Okay. All right, what else you have, Mr. Manager?
Last but not least, I'd like to, one more time, I'd like to introduce Jane Link, the new senior executive assistant for me, replacing an interim Sabrina Young, who actually did a fantastic job the last few months. And also, I know at the last meeting at the BOCC we introduced Van, but one more time introducing Van Williams as the new Director of Strategic Communications.
Thank you. I echo your comments. I look forward, and first of all, Sabrina, I thought, did an excellent job. I got to work with her every week when we were putting together the agendas. I appreciate that. Welcome aboard. I've already welcomed Van here, but again, welcome. Appreciate it. Appreciate you being here.
All right, that's all I have.
Okay, commissioners, what all do you have? Commissioner Ranza? Commissioner Unruh?
Couple things. Tim, I got accosted by a citizen this morning early, and they think that we should reinstate a Board of Health Advisory Board. And I explained we had one once before, we did away with it, didn't have too many medical people on it, blah, blah, blah. But this person wanted me to, I says, I'll bring it up to you, you can talk with Adrian and the people in the community who are involved in that, but his concern was things like bed bugs, which I guess is a big problem now. I didn't know that.
It has been a problem.
So-
I think it's the same size problem it's been for the past 6 or 8 years, and the health department works with it. There's a bed bug coalition in the community.
There's a bed bug coalition.
Absolutely.
But is there a task force?
Things beside bed bugs, right? People beside bed bugs. Okay.
Joint Terrorism Task Force.
Okay. All right, well, I guess,
I'll be glad to talk to her again. We did do, we worked with budget, and we had a white paper on the viability of an advisory board in addition to the Board of Health. And at that point in time, it didn't seem like it made sense to have both. But I'll be glad to talk to Adrian, and we'll connect with the community folks again.
okay, we got a lot of folks out there working public health, but I told him I would see what the official staff perspective was, so. Second thing, just, I guess the clerk's office is represented today. All right, well, I need to get a hold of Kelly or Karen or something. The Minnehaha Township last night met without their trustee, and the clerk and the treasurer voted to change their budget here at the last minute. They're going to try to get that done, and
Which way are they going on the budget?
they're going to reduce it. Because it was supposed to be a 6 mil increase, and they think the treasurer says we can get by with a 2 mil increase, so he wants to move it back, and I think that's real unusual, but I gotta make sure Kelly or Karen helps him accomplish that. And they also have indicated they want to work with the original agreement that Wichita and Sedgwick County and Minnehaha Township would go together to do some road repair, and they'd overcome the legal problem on 127th of who legally owns that road, and have the city of Wichita take that road. So the commission had approved that, our partnership in that earlier, and they, after 6-7 months, now they want to go forward with that. So David, whoever we have to let know, but it won't be done until next year now. Okay, and we think the city's still on board.
Yes.
Okay, all right. And then my last comments, really question, who all's going to KAC next week? And we're not having a meeting next week, right?
No meeting next week. And who else going?
I'm
I know,
going.
I'm going. Anyone besides the two of us going? And Tanya?
Okay,
Very good.
okay. Oh,
Appraiser's office going.
okay, just kind of want to, oh, one other thing back on Minnehaha, Jim, the treasurer's going to resign, and I think I talked to you about Carlson, and he's
Yes.
still willing to go forward, so we'll get that going.
I agree.
Okay. That's all I got.
That's all you got? Commissioner O'Donnell? Commissioner Howe?
Well, I guess just to echo Commissioner Unruh, if we can make that resignation and the appointment on the same BOCC meeting, I would be glad to see that happen,
Yeah.
if that's okay to do that.
Yeah, and the resignation, Rick said he wrote it in his letter for the 30th of October, so whatever Wednesday immediately after, that's when we'd want to do it, I guess.
Okay.
We got it? Okay. I'm looking at are you on that, Lisa? Get on that, Lisa.
Anything else, Commissioner Howe?
No.
Okay, I've got just a couple things. First of all, do we or do we not want to discuss KAC legislative agenda? If not, I will just vote on it as it is. I just need to know whether or not that's what the will is of the commissioners.
Again, their two highest legislative desires are contrary to ours. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I would not. I support the KAC, but I don't support their platform because of that. So.
Okay. So there's only two of us going that are they're voting. How do you want us to just go ahead and vote for it even though we disagree with it, to keep harmony across the other 104 counties, or what do you want us to do?
We've done both. We voted against it one year and made a news story, and then there's only a couple of people voted no. And then after that, we just simply, I guess make our comments behind, to the individuals, I guess, in the organization, rather than make that a public issue. So I would leave it to the will of the attender.
I don't know that it's critical that we vote against it. I think we need unity, and we can work it with our own legislative agenda.
Yeah. I would support the attender to do what he feels is best in that situation, but just because it's in their platform doesn't mean we support it.
Okay, very good. Also, when is, I know last week we were supposed to have Sedgwick County Fair, that building on our agenda. Do you know when it's scheduled for?
We haven't recalendared it. We'll do it.
Okay.
We'll get it on the calendar.
All right, if we could pick that up. The other thing is our legislative agenda. We've talked about it briefly. Do you know when we're going to have that on our schedule?
We're going to talk about it on October 30th.
October 30th? Good. All right. And I know Kelly's here now, and so is Tanya, but they were on the front page of the newspaper the other day. You're going to submit something to try and correct the problems we're having with inmates submitting, so that we can add that to our legislative agenda.
Well, one thing I'm planning on doing is next week at the KAC, I'm going to be speaking to the Registered Youth Association to see what type of change that they would support, if they're on the board, or that change. And Kelly and I both are going to be at Johnson County, see what we can come up with that would be appropriate.
Well, we probably need to work with you so that we can get it included in our legislative agenda, whatever you come up with. Okay? All right. Anything else from the commissioners? Anything from our electeds? Say that again.
The Chiefs are 5-0.
I don't know. I hate to say it, but I don't watch pro football right now. So, I appreciate the Chiefs are 5-0, but beyond that, I'm not sure I'm a pro football fan at the current time. Anything else from the staff around the table? Anything from anyone else in the room? All right. Adjourned.